In a country as vast and diverse as India, with a population of over 1.4 billion people, understanding who we are and what we need is more important than what we think. If we start by who we are, how many people are there in our family, it's an easy count. But how many are there in our neighborhood? That's a big number. So think about your city, your district, or your state. We can't really tell what the exact number is. And when it comes to the whole of India, that's impossible to tell without some deep research. Thankfully, we get this research and help every 10 years with the national census. In one sentence, a census basically counts how many people are living in the country. It collects, compiles, and analyzes economic, demographic, and social data. A surprising fact is that India's population census is one of the largest administrative exercises undertaken in the world. If you're thinking, why should I care about some government survey? Hear me out. What if I told you that the census holds the key to your future, to the future of your children? What if I told you that the answer you give during the census could shape the direction of this country for the next decade and beyond? India's history of conducting census data dates back to 1881, and since then it has been taken every 10 years without break. But we haven't had the census in 13 years now since 2011. Our census was originally scheduled for 2021 but got delayed due to the lockdown, and now it will start again in September of 2024. This process will take around 18 months to complete, and the results are expected to come by March of 2026. This delay in the latest census has drawn a lot of criticism from economists both within and outside the government, because all other statistical surveys depends completely on this one routine government practice. It has majorly impacted what we can make out from the economy, inflation, and employment. Things have extremely changed since 2011. Deaths, births, districts, divisions, everything. And the data relying on this outdated information has almost disturbed the quality of policy making and resource allocation for the next decade. So, here is why the 2024 census is going to decide our future. The upcoming census is about us and our community. This data is more than just numbers on a spreadsheet, and without this mapped out, we would literally be making decisions based on just guesses rather than facts. Since 2011, a lot has changed, one of them being digitalization. The 2011 census was literally done on pen and paper, which is then collated together on a computer. But since we have all been taken over by smartphones and the internet, this census will also be a proud milestone with the first digital census in India's history. Letting people fill out their details online will make things easier and more inclusive. The data collected will cover all kinds of details like age, gender, jobs, and living conditions, giving us a clear picture of society. So, differences between regions, tracking their progress, and making sure growth is fair across the country will also be right in front of us. But, of course, not all good things come easy. The census has its fair share of concerns too. One big worry is how the government might use this data for political advantage, especially when it comes to delimitation. Think of delimitation as a process in which borders of our constituencies are adjusted after counting how many people live in each place. For example, if one part of a city has grown a lot in population, the voting boundaries might be redrawn to balance out the number of voters in each area. The last delimitation exercise was based on the 2001 census, and the current delimitation will happen after the 2026 census. Now comes another important aspect of the census: caste. India has different castes, and while we divide the population in various areas, one question is, will they release the caste census too? This has become a hot topic because this decision will decide if there is social justice and fair policies for all, or will it just make things complicated by dividing society even more and increasing the demands for reservations. The central government has not yet given any official confirmation, but apparently they will announce it when they give out the overall census dates. The question is, why do we even need a separate one when the data collects everything from each area? There are 4 big reasons why we really need it, and as Peter Drucker famously said, only what gets measured gets managed. It just makes sense to practice it. First, it's a social reality we can't ignore. Caste still shapes a lot of life in India, where people live, their surnames, and even who they marry. In fact, only about 5% of marriages in 2011-2012 were between different castes. And let's not forget that caste plays a huge role in elections and picking leaders, so obviously it'll be good for our government. Second, it's a legal necessity. For things like reservations in elections, education, and government jobs to work fairly, we need accurate caste data. Even though our constitution talks about class, the Supreme Court has ruled that caste is often the main factor in defining backward classes. So detailed data is very much needed for keeping things fair. Third, it's an administrative need. And fourth, a moral issue. We need this data to make sure that benefits go to the right people and that no one is left out. It will prevent certain powerful castes from taking over reserved spots. Plus, without clear data, the elites, whether from upper castes or dominant OBCs, will end up hoarding a big chunk of the country's wealth, power, and opportunities. But wait, you might be wondering, if it's so important, then why was it delayed for so long? There's one possible answer to this. It might sound strange, but our constitution says that the next redrawing of delimitation can only be done based on the census taken after 2026. So, if the census happens in 2024 or 25, the delimitation would have to wait until the next census, which would be in the 2030s. This means if the BJP wants delimitation to happen before the 2029 election, they would need to delay the census until 2026 or 27 to meet the after 26 requirement. So, the benefits of caste census are out there and speak loud enough. But many are arguing against it.
Imagine being asked, what's your caste? जिसकी जात का पता नहीं, वो गन्ना की बात करता है।
मैं पूछना चाहता हूँ, काहे भाषण दे रहे हैं भाई सदन में, जहाँ आपकी सरकार एक करिए। आपसे कोई अगर जाति पूछ ले, तो मम्मी 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 मुझसे जाति पूछ लिया गया, मम्मी मेरा इंसल्ट हो गया।
Some say it's socially controversial. The caste divide is something we've been trying to eliminate for years, but this will affect that. However, while India's social divide goes back thousands of years, counting SCs and STs in the census since 1951 hasn't led to any conflicts. India already counts religion, language, and region. Interestingly, some argue it's an administrative headache. But even though race can be a tricky concept, countries like US still count it. India has already managed to count over 1200 castes in the SC category and nearly 700 tribes in the ST category. So, adding around 4,000 more castes shouldn't be impossible, since in reservation they are also including subcategories. Recently, Union Minister Chirag Paswan, the leader of Lok Janshakti Party, which is an NDA partner from Bihar, came out in support of the census just days after he opposed the government's lateral entry move. Paswan said that only when the central government is aware of caste-wise populations, they can figure out the proper distribution of resources and scheme benefits.
की जरूरत इसलिए हम लोग को है क्योंकि आज की भी तारीख में राज्य सरकार हो या केंद्र सरकार हो, कई ऐसी नीतियां हैं जो जाति के आधार पर ही बनाई जाती हैं, उनको हैंड होल्डिंग प्रोवाइड करने को लेकर, ताकि उन जातियों को मुख्य धारा के साथ जोड़ा जा सके। इस सोच के साथ इन नीतियों को बनाया जाता है। तो ऐसे में सरकार के पास जरूरी है कि उन जातियों के आंकड़े हो जिनके लिए वो नीतियों को बना रहे हैं, ताकि उसी के अनुपात में उस राशि को आवंटित किया जा सके।
The NDA alliance is in full support because regional parties and political leaders are very adamant about it, and the pressure has forced NDA allies to support the census to maintain political relevance. Now, the government is against releasing the data because apparently they want to promote unity and equality among all citizens. But wait, the whole reason we need it is because there is no equality in unity. Doesn't really make sense. Some officials even say that it would lead to economic decline by pushing caste divisions, and the reservation demand would rise. Again, the whole point is to provide the underprivileged a chance. The main question here is whether the government would publicly declare that data or not. Only time will tell. Okay, so the census is clear, but will a mere population census decide a Lok Sabha seat? Surprisingly, the allocation of Lok Sabha seats is directly linked to the population of each state. The idea is that each state should have a number of seats that are in line with its population so that there is equal representation. How it happens is that after a census, the population is analyzed and that will determine how many seats each state should have. As of now, the total number of Lok Sabha seats is 543 and divided among the states based on their population. So, states with higher population receive more seats, while those with lower population receive less. And coming back to the delimitation, it does benefit a lot of states and their parties. States like Bihar and UP will clearly get more seats because of a very high population and fertility rate, while Tamil Nadu and Kerala, which have implemented effective family planning measures and have lower population growth rates, may lose seats. BJP here is in for a lot of benefits too, as it has heavy influence on northern states. With seats increasing in the north and reducing in the south, their national fame will only rise with high Lok Sabha seats. The final thing I want to talk about is NPR, or the National Population Register, which is a database of usual residents of the country that is being updated as part of the 2021 census. This registers everything and anything in the local, sub-district, district, state and national level under the Citizenship Act 1955 and the Citizenship Registration of Citizens and the Issue of National Identity Cards Rules 2003. It is absolutely mandatory for every usual Indian resident of India to register in the NPR. A usual resident is basically any person who has resided in a local area for the past 6 months or more, or a person who intends to reside in that area for the next 6 months or more. No, this is not the same as National Register of Citizens or NRC. NRC is a register of Indian citizens and the NPR is a more detailed list that includes both citizens and non-citizens. NPR contains demographics as well as biometric data including name, father's, mother's and spouse's name, if married, sex, date of birth, present address, occupation and more. But whether you should be worried about NPR or not is subjective. It isn't just about our citizenship. Even a foreigner staying in a locality for more than 6 months will have to sign up. But this time, there are concerns that the NPR could potentially be used as a first step towards a nationwide NRC. Now that we are at the end of the video, all I can say is that with a 13-year gap, there is a lot to be covered and answered in the 2024 census. Overall, our answers can make a real difference in the lives of millions of people across India. It could define gender differences, discrimination, unemployment and poverty and expose the elites who are eating up the wealth of those who really need it. So when you ask, how does this affect me personally? Why should I care? The answer is simple. Because the census affects every aspect of your life, from the quality of the roads you drive on, to the school your children attend, to the healthcare you receive. It defines the representation you have in the government and the resources your own people get. But unfortunately, despite its importance, many people don't take the census seriously. They see it as a bureaucratic exercise, a chore that they can avoid. This attitude can have serious consequences. If people don't participate, if they provide inaccurate information, the entire system becomes flawed. So, the next time you're asked to fill out a census form, remember that you're not just answering questions, you're shaping India's future.